The large room was filled with students from many different worlds. They sat in rows that went up like stairs. Each student looked different from the others. Some had many arms. Some had scales. Some glowed with soft light. Some floated above their seats. But all of them were here for the same reason. They were here to learn about the universe and the life forms that lived in it. Instructor Velthari stood at the center of the room. She was tall and thin. Her body was made of something that looked like blue crystal. When she moved, tiny lights flickered inside her. She had taught biology at the Galactic Academy for over 2,000 years. She had seen many species come and go. She had studied the DNA of creatures from every corner of the galaxy. But today was different. Today she would show her students something that had made the entire scientific community very nervous. She touched a small device on her desk. A bright light appeared in the air above her. It twisted and turned, forming into a shape that every student recognized. It was DNA, the building blocks of life. The code that told every living thing how to grow, how to live, and how to survive. Today, we will study a new species, Velthari said. Her voice was calm, but carried to every corner of the room. They call themselves humans. They come from a small planet called Earth, in a star system that is very far from the center of the galaxy. A student in the front row raised one of his 4 arms. His name was Norl, and he belonged to a species called the Cathrians. They were known for asking many questions. Instructor, Norl said, why should we study such a young species? They have only been traveling between stars for a very short time. What can we learn from them? Velthari made a sound that her students knew meant she was pleased with the question. That is exactly what I thought when I first received this assignment. I believed it would be boring. I believed humans would be simple and easy to understand. I was wrong. She moved her hand, and the DNA in the air grew larger. Now the students could see every tiny part of it. The twisted ladder shape. The small pieces that connected one side to the other. The patterns that repeated over and over again. Look closely, Velthari said. Tell me what you see. The students leaned forward. Some used special devices to make the image even larger. Some used their natural abilities to see things that others could not. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a student from the Bellori species made a sharp sound of surprise. The Bellori breathed through slits in their necks, and these slits were now moving very fast. Instructor, I must be seeing this wrong. The backup systems in this DNA are impossible. You are not seeing it wrong, Velthari said. Count them again. The Bellori student looked scared. There are 17. 17 backup systems for critical functions. My species has 4. The Cathrians have 5. I have never heard of any species with more than 8. Velthari nodded slowly. And that is only the beginning. She changed the display. Now it showed human DNA next to the DNA of other species. The difference was clear. Human DNA was more complex. It had more layers. It had more connections between different parts. It looked like someone had taken normal DNA and made it stronger in every possible way. Let me explain what you are seeing, Velthari said. Every living thing has DNA that can be damaged. Radiation can damage it. Disease can damage it. Chemicals can damage it. When DNA is damaged, the living thing usually dies or becomes very sick. The students nodded. This was basic knowledge. Every child in the galaxy learned this. Most species have a few backup systems to fix this damage. If one part of the DNA breaks, another part can repair it. This is normal. This is how life survives. Velthari paused. But humans have taken this to a level that should not be possible. She pointed to a section of the human DNA. This sequence here allows their cells to fix damage from radiation. But not just fix it. Their cells learn from the damage. They become better at handling radiation in the future. The DNA remembers what hurt it and builds new defenses. A tall student from the Synthery species stood up suddenly. The Synthery were known for being very logical and very skeptical. They did not believe anything without proof. "Instructor, that is not possible," the Synthery said. "Evolution takes thousands of generations. You cannot tell me that humans can evolve within a single lifetime. That breaks every rule of biology." Valthari was not angry at being questioned. She had expected this reaction. "I understand your doubt. I had the same doubt. So I tested it myself." She changed the display again. Now it showed two samples of human cells. One was labeled before and one was labeled after. I took human cells and exposed them to radiation that would kill cells from any other species. The Bellori cells died in minutes. The Kethran cells lasted a few hours. The Synthery cells lasted half a day. She pointed to the human cells. The human cells did not die. They were damaged at first. But within 3 days, they had completely repaired themselves. And when I exposed them to the same radiation again, they were not damaged at all. The room was completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. "I thought there was an error," Valthari continued. "So I tried different types of damage. Extreme cold, extreme heat, toxic chemicals, disease. Every time, the human cells did the same thing. They were damaged, they learned, and they became stronger." Noro raised his arm again. His voice was quiet now, almost afraid. "Instructor, how is this possible? How can one species have DNA that is so different from everyone else?" Valthari turned off the display. The room became darker. She looked at her students, and for the first time in many years, she did not have a complete answer. "That is the question that has frightened the Galactic Council," she said. "Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill them constantly. Their world had ice ages that covered entire continents. It had volcanoes that blocked out the sun for years. It had diseases that killed millions of them at once. It had predators that hunted them every day." She walked slowly around the room. Most species, when faced with such challenges, would die. They would become extinct. Their DNA would break down, and they would disappear from the universe. But humans did not die. Every disaster made them stronger. Every challenge taught their DNA new tricks. They are not just survivors. They are something new. Something we have never seen before. A student from a very old species called the Verneth spoke for the first time. The Verneth had existed for billions of years. They rarely spoke, but when they did, everyone listened. "Teacher," the Verneth said, "are you telling us that humans cannot be killed?" Valthari thought about this question for a long time before answering. "No, humans can die. They are not immortal, but their species as a whole is something different. Their DNA will not let them go extinct. It adapts too fast. It learns too quickly. It survives too well." She looked at all her students, her crystalline body glowing softly in the dim room. "That is why the Galactic Council has sent human representatives to observe this lecture. They want to see how we react. They want to know if we are afraid." The students turned to look at the observation gallery above them. There, behind a transparent wall, 2 humans stood watching. A man and a woman. They looked small. They looked fragile. But now every student in the room knew the truth. Those 2 small creatures carried inside them the most powerful DNA in the entire galaxy. And no one knew what that meant for the future. Kevin Marshall watched the alien students through the transparent wall of the observation gallery. He was 43 years old. He had gray hair at his temples and lines around his eyes. He had spent 20 years working as a diplomat, first on Earth and then in space. But he had never felt as strange as he did right now. Beside him stood Dr. Lisa Cortez. She was younger than Kevin, maybe 35. She had dark hair pulled back in a simple style and wore the gray uniform of the human diplomatic corps. She was taking notes on a small tablet, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. "They look scared," Lisa said quietly. She did not look up from her tablet. Kevin nodded. "Wouldn't you be? They just learned that we are different from every other species in the galaxy. Different in a way that makes them nervous." Down in the lecture hall, Instructor Valthari was still speaking. Her blue crystal body caught the light as she moved. She was pointing at different parts of the human DNA display, explaining things that Kevin could not hear through the wall. "Can you turn on the audio?" Kevin asked. Lisa touched her tablet. Suddenly, they could hear everything happening in the room below. "Notice the mutation adaptation rate," Valthari was saying. "When human cells are exposed to radiation that would sterilize most galactic species, the cells do not simply resist damage. They learn from it. They evolve." A tall student with smooth gray skin stood up. Kevin recognized the species. They were called Synthery. They were known for being very logical and very proud of their advanced civilization. "Instructor, that is impossible," the Synthery student said. "Evolution requires thousands of generations. One lifetime is not enough time for DNA to change in meaningful ways." Valthari's body flickered with soft light. "You are correct that normal evolution works that way. But human DNA does not follow normal rules." She changed the display. Now it showed a graph with many lines going up and down. "This is data from a study we conducted on human volunteers. We exposed them to controlled amounts of radiation over 6 months. We tested their cells at the beginning and at the end." The graph changed to show 2 sets of data side by side. At the beginning of the study, human cells had normal resistance to radiation, about the same as most other species. But at the end of 6 months, their resistance had increased by over 300%. Their DNA had rewritten itself to handle the radiation better. The room went completely quiet. Kevin could see the students looking at each other with expressions he could not read. Were they scared? Amazed? Angry? He could not tell. "The humans call this epigenetics," Valthari continued. "It is a system where the environment can change how genes work without changing the genes themselves. Many species have simple versions of this, but humans have developed it into something much more powerful. Their genes do not just respond to their environment. They predict future threats and prepare for them." A student from a species Kevin did not recognize raised what might have been an arm. "Instructor, are you saying that human DNA can see the future?" "Not exactly," Valthari said, "but it can learn from patterns. If a human is exposed to cold weather, their DNA begins preparing their children to handle cold weather even better. If a human survives a disease, their DNA passes information about that disease to the next generation. Each generation becomes stronger than the one before." Lisa stopped taking notes. She looked at Kevin with wide eyes. "Did we know this? Did our scientists know our DNA could do this?" Kevin shook his head slowly. "We knew about epigenetics, but I don't think anyone understood how far it went. Not like this." Down in the lecture hall, another student was speaking. This one belonged to the Bellori species. They lived in water and breathed through slits in their necks. The student's voice was bubbly and wet. "Instructor, my people have existed for 400 million years. We have seen many species come and go. We have watched civilizations rise and fall. In all that time, we have never encountered DNA like this. Where did it come from?" Valthari was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "That is the question that no one can answer. Human DNA shows signs of extreme stress adaptation. This means that at many points in their history, Humans faced situations that should have destroyed them completely. Extinction-level events. And somehow, they survived every single one. She pulled up a new display. This one showed the planet Earth. It was a small blue and green world covered with clouds. It looked peaceful and calm. "Do not let this image fool you," Valthari said. "This planet has been trying to kill humans since they first appeared. Ice ages that covered half the world in frozen water. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun and killed most of the plants. Asteroid impacts that shook the entire planet. Diseases that killed more than half of the human population at once." The display changed to show each of these disasters. Images of ice covering entire continents. Smoke and fire pouring from mountains. Rocks falling from the sky. Sick people lying in the streets. "Any one of these events should have ended humanity," Valthari said. "Most species would not survive a single one. Humans survived all of them. And each time they survived, their DNA became stronger. It learned new tricks. It built new defenses." Kevin felt a strange feeling in his chest. He had always known that human history was full of suffering and survival. Every school child learned about ice ages and plagues and disasters. But he had never thought about what those things had done to human DNA. He had never realized that all that pain had made his species into something the galaxy had never seen before. The Galactic Council has classified human DNA as a Level 7 biological anomaly. Valthari said, "This is the highest classification possible. It means that human biology does not fit into any existing category. It means that we do not fully understand what humans are capable of." The old Verneth student spoke again. His voice was like wind moving through dry leaves. "Teacher, you speak of what human DNA has done in the past. But what can it do in the future? What will humans become if they continue to evolve at this rate?" Valthari turned to look at the observation gallery. For a moment, her eyes met Kevin's through the transparent wall. He felt like she could see right through him. Like she could see the DNA inside his cells, working and changing and adapting even now. "That is what frightens the Council," Valthari said. "Humans have only been aware of their own genetics for a little over a century. In that short time, they have already begun to modify themselves intentionally. They cure diseases by editing their own DNA. They enhance their abilities. They extend their lifespans." She turned back to her students. Most species took millions of years to develop such technology. And when they did, they used it carefully. They made small changes. They were afraid of making mistakes. But humans are not afraid. They embrace change. They welcome it. The Centauri student stood up again. His gray face was hard to read, but his voice sounded worried. "Instructor, are you suggesting that humans might become a threat to the galaxy?" Valthari did not answer right away. She looked around the room at her students. Then she looked up at the observation gallery again. "I am suggesting that humans are an unknown variable. Their DNA has survived everything their planet could throw at it. It has adapted to every challenge. It has learned from every disaster. And now humans are leaving their planet. They are spreading out into the galaxy. They will face new challenges, new environments, new threats." She paused. "And their DNA will adapt to those as well. It will learn. It will change. And no one knows what humans will become when that happens." Kevin watched as the students below him talked quietly among themselves. Some looked excited. Some looked scared. Some looked angry. But all of them kept glancing up at the observation gallery, where two ordinary-looking humans stood watching. Lisa put away her tablet. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They don't know what to do with us." Kevin nodded slowly. "Neither do we. We never knew we were this different. We never knew our DNA was doing all of this. He looked down at his own hands. They looked normal, ordinary, just human hands. But somewhere inside those hands, inside every cell of his body, something amazing was happening. His DNA was working, adapting, learning, preparing him for threats he might never face, building defenses he might never need. He was human, and for the first time, he understood what that really meant. Dr. Nathan Perry sat alone in his small office aboard the research station. The room was cramped and filled with data screens. Papers and tablets covered every surface. Empty coffee cups formed small towers on his desk. He had been working for 16 hours straight, and his eyes burned from staring at screens for so long. But he could not stop. What he had found was too important. Nathan was a historian, not a biologist. His job was to study the records of alien civilizations. He translated old documents. He compared different cultures. He tried to understand how species developed over time. It was quiet work, and he liked it that way. But 3 weeks ago, he had started noticing something strange in the data. Small things at first. Numbers that did not add up. Dates that did not make sense. He had thought they were errors in the translation. He had thought he was making mistakes. Now he knew the truth. He picked up his communicator and called his colleague, Dr. Megan Torres. She answered after a few seconds. Her face appeared on his screen. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. "Nathan, it's 2 a.m, she said. "This better be important." "It is. Can you come to my office? I need you to see something." Megan sighed, but she nodded. "Give me 10 minutes. While he waited, Nathan organized the data he had collected. He put the most important files at the top of the screen. He made sure everything was in order. When Megan arrived, he wanted to show her exactly what he had found. She came through the door, looking annoyed. She was wearing a robe over her sleeping clothes. Her short brown hair was messy. But when she saw Nathan's face, her expression changed. "You look scared," she said. "What did you find?" Nathan pointed at the main screen. "Look at this. I've been comparing the development rates of every spacefaring species in the Galactic database. This chart shows how long it took each species to go from primitive tools to space travel." Megan looked at the chart. It showed dozens of species, each with a number next to their name. The numbers ranged from 30,000 to 80,000 years. "The average is about 40,000 years, Nathan said. "Some species are faster, some are slower, but they all fall within a certain range. It takes time to develop technology. It takes time to build civilizations. Everyone follows roughly the same pattern." "Okay," Megan said. "That makes sense. What's the problem?" Nathan touched the screen. A new line appeared at the bottom of the chart. It was labeled Humanity. The number next to it was 12,000. Megan stared at the number. She blinked several times. "That can't be right. That's 3 times faster than the fastest species on the list." "I know. I checked it 20 times. I thought there was an error. But the data is correct." Nathan pulled up more information. And that's not even the strangest part. Look at what happened during those 12,000 years. He showed her a timeline of human history. It was filled with red marks and warning symbols. Ice ages that covered entire continents. A supervolcano that almost killed everyone. Plagues that wiped out half the population. Wars that destroyed entire civilizations. Famines, floods, droughts. Nathan shook his head. By every measure we use to track species development, humans should have gone extinct at least 7 times. Instead, they made it to space. Megan sat down heavily in the only other chair in the room. "How is that possible?" "That's what I've been trying to figure out." Nathan switched to a different display. "So I started looking at other data. Biological data. genetic records. And I found something even stranger. He showed her 2 DNA samples side by side. This is human DNA from about 10,000 years ago. We recovered it from ancient remains on Earth. And this is human DNA from today. Megan looked at both samples. Then she looked again. Her face went pale. They're different. Very different. In 10,000 years, human DNA has changed more than most species change in 1,000,000 years. Their genes are constantly rewriting themselves, constantly adapting, constantly getting stronger. Megan stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars filled the darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, a small blue planet that had created something the galaxy had never seen before. "Nathan," she said slowly, "are you saying that humans evolved faster than any other species because their planet kept trying to kill them?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. Most species evolve slowly because their environments are stable. They find a good planet, they settle down, and they stay the same for millions of years. But Earth was never stable. It was always changing, always throwing new challenges at the humans. And the humans kept adapting." Nathan joined her at the window. "Think about what that means. Every other species in the galaxy was shaped by safety. They found planets that were comfortable and stayed there. Their DNA never needed to change because their world never changed. But humans were shaped by danger," Megan finished. "Their DNA learned to expect disaster. It learned to prepare for anything." "Exactly." Nathan rubbed his tired eyes. "We're not just survivors, Megan. We're the product of constant struggle. Every cell in our bodies carries the memory of every disaster we ever faced. We're built to handle things that would destroy any other species." Megan was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was small. "Does the Galactic Council know about this?" "They're starting to figure it out. That's why they sent observers to the biology lecture yesterday. They wanted to see how other species would react to the information. And how did they react?" Nathan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They were terrified. 300 students from 47 species, and all of them were terrified of us. Not because we have weapons, not because we have ships, but because our DNA is something they've never seen before." Megan turned away from the window. Her expression was troubled. "Nathan, what happens now? What do we do with this information?" "I don't know. But I think the galaxy is asking itself the same question. What do they do with a species that can't be stopped? A species whose very DNA refuses to let them die?" He pulled up one more file. It was a summary of all his research. Everything he had learned over the past 3 weeks. "Here's what I know for sure. Humans should not exist. By every rule of biology and evolution, we should have gone extinct thousands of years ago. But we didn't. Our DNA found ways to survive. It learned from every disaster. It got better every time something tried to kill us." Megan read through the summary. Her eyes moved quickly over the text. "This says that human DNA has markers for surviving extinction-level events. Multiple extinction-level events. Events that should have ended us completely. 7 of them," Nathan confirmed. 7 times in our history, something happened that should have wiped us out. And 7 times, our DNA adapted fast enough to save at least some of us. And those survivors passed their stronger genes to their children. And those children were even harder to kill." He turned off the display. The room went dark, except for the light from the stars outside. "We're not just another species, Megan. We're something new. Something the galaxy has never encountered before. A species that was forged by constant disaster. A species whose DNA has learned to survive anything." Megan's voice was barely a whisper. "And the galaxy doesn't know what to do with us." "No," Nathan agreed. "They don't. And honestly, neither do we. We've spent our whole history just trying to survive. We never had time to ask what we were becoming. We never had time to understand what our struggles were doing to our DNA. He looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations were meeting right now to discuss the human question. What were humans? What could they become? Were they a threat? Were they a gift? No one knew. But now we're out here, Nathan said softly. We're in space. We're meeting other species. And for the first time, we have a chance to see ourselves through their eyes, to understand what we really are. Megan stood beside him. They were both quiet, looking at the endless darkness and the countless points of light. The species that refuses to die, she said finally. That's what we are. The species that should not exist but does anyway. Nathan nodded slowly. It was the best description he had ever heard. And he had no idea whether the galaxy would see it as something wonderful or something terrifying. Maybe it was both. The council chamber was one of the oldest places in the galaxy. It sat at the center of a massive space station that orbited a dying star. The walls were made of stone that had been carried from 12 different worlds. The ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Light came from windows that showed the orange glow of the ancient sun outside. Hi, Councillor Jethmar sat at the head of a circular table. She was very old, even by the standards of her long-lived species. Her skin was the color of dried leaves, and her eyes glowed with soft golden light. She had led the Galactic Council for over 300 years. She had seen wars end and alliances form. She had watched new species join the galactic community and old species fade away. But she had never faced a question like this one. Around the table sat 11 other council members. They represented the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. The Belori, who had lived in their ocean world for 400 million years. The Centauri, whose logical minds had built the greatest machines ever created. The Vreneth, who were so old that no one knew when their civilization had begun. And 8 others, each with their own history and their own concerns. Jethmar placed a data tablet on the table in front of her. You have all read the biological assessment. You have all seen the data from the Galactic Academy lecture. I will not waste time repeating information you already know. Councillor Bren of the Mechanical Collective leaned forward. His body was partly organic and partly machine, with metal plates covering half his face. Hi, Councillor. The report is very troubling. It suggests that human DNA is fundamentally different from all other known species. But surely this is an exaggeration. They are biological creatures like any other. They are not like any other, Jethmar replied. That is precisely the problem. She touched the tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed the double helix of human DNA, slowly rotating in the air. Human DNA contains sequences that should not exist in a naturally evolved species. Their genetic code has built-in systems for surviving almost anything. Extreme temperatures, radiation, disease, poison. Even genetic damage triggers repair systems that we have never seen before. Councillor Tiern of the Belori made a bubbling sound through her gill slits. Are you suggesting that humans were artificially created? That some ancient species designed them? No, that would almost be easier to accept. Jethmar shook her head slowly. Every test we have conducted shows that human DNA evolved naturally. There was no outside interference. No genetic engineering from another civilization. Humans created themselves through pure survival pressure. The council members looked at each other. Some of them seemed confused. Some of them seemed scared. All of them seemed worried. Let me explain this more clearly, Jethmar continued. Every species in this room chose a path of stability. When your ancestors developed genetic technology, you used it to make yourselves safer. You removed dangerous mutations. You reduced the randomness in your DNA. You made sure that your children would be just like you, generation after generation. She gestured at the rotating DNA strand. Humans did the opposite. Their planet was so dangerous that stability meant death. The only humans who survived were the ones whose DNA could change, could adapt, could become something new when the old form was not good enough. Counselor Viral of the Synthery stood up. His gray face was calm, but his voice was tight with concern. "Aye, Counselor, you are describing a species with unlimited evolutionary potential. A species that can become anything given enough time and pressure. Yes, that is extremely dangerous." Yes, the room fell silent. The ancient sun outside the windows continued its slow death, casting orange light across the stone walls. After a long moment, the doors to the chamber opened. Commander Greg Hayes of the Human Diplomatic Corps walked in. He was tall for a human, with broad shoulders and a face that showed both strength and kindness. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations. He stopped at the edge of the circular table and waited to be recognized. Zethmar nodded at him. "Commander Hayes, thank you for joining us. Please, speak." Greg looked around at the council members. He could see the fear in their eyes. Even the Synthery, who prided themselves on being logical and unemotional, seemed worried. "Council members," Greg said, "I know what you have learned about human DNA. I know it scares you. I would like to explain our perspective." "Please do," Zethmar said. Greg took a deep breath. For most of our history, humans did not know about our own genetics. We did not understand why we survived when other species on our planet went extinct. We just knew that we had to keep fighting, keep adapting, keep surviving. He walked slowly around the outside of the table. Our world tried to kill us every single day. Ice ages froze us. Volcanoes burned us. Diseases killed millions of us at once. We fought wars that destroyed entire civilizations. And through all of it, we kept going. Not because we were special, not because we were chosen, but because giving up was not in our nature. Counselor Tiarn spoke up. "Commander, your survival instinct is admirable. But the Council is concerned about what your species might become. Your DNA adapts faster than any other. If you are exposed to new environments, new challenges, new pressures, you will change in ways that no one can predict." Greg nodded. "You're right. We will change. We always have. But I want you to understand something about how humans think." He stopped walking and faced the Council directly. "Yes, our DNA adapts. Yes, we can become stronger and more resilient. But that's not what makes us human. What makes us human is our choice. Our decision to use our abilities for good instead of evil." Counselor Bren made a skeptical sound. "Commander, every species claims to be good. That does not make it true." "I know," Greg said. "So let me tell you a story. About 100 years ago, before we had space travel, humans discovered nuclear energy. We learned how to split atoms and release tremendous power. Do you know what we did with that knowledge?" The Council waited in silence. "We built bombs. Weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We made enough of them to kill every human on Earth many times over." Greg's voice was heavy with old shame. "We came very close to destroying ourselves. For years, we lived with the knowledge that at any moment, everything could end." He looked at each council member in turn. "But we didn't destroy ourselves. We stepped back from the edge. We chose to survive. We chose to build instead of burn. We took that same nuclear technology and used it to power our cities, to heal diseases, to explore space." Zethmar leaned forward. "You are saying that humans are capable of great destruction, but you choose not to destroy. I'm saying that every species is capable of destruction. The difference is not what you can do. It's what you choose to do." Greg smiled slightly. Our DNA may adapt faster than anyone else's. We may be harder to kill than anyone expected. But in the end, we're still making choices. Every day, we decide who we want to be. The council was quiet. Some of the members seemed thoughtful. Some still seemed worried. But the fear in the room was a little less than before. Commander Hayes, Zethmar said finally, the council has discussed what to do about humanity for many weeks. We have considered many options. Some of my colleagues have suggested limiting your species, restricting your access to certain technologies, keeping you away from environments that might cause your DNA to change in dangerous ways. Greg's face remained calm, but his hands tightened at his sides. I understand. However, Zethmar continued, I have argued against such restrictions. Not because I believe they would work. Your species has shown that it cannot be contained. But because I believe that trying to control you would be wrong. She stood up from her chair. Even though she was old and frail, she seemed powerful in that moment. Humanity has survived everything. You have earned your place in the galaxy. The question is not whether you belong here. The question is what kind of relationship we will have with you. Greg felt something loosen in his chest. High Counselor, my species wants only peace. We have spent our entire history fighting for survival. Now that we are finally safe, we want to help others. We want to share what we have learned. We want to be part of something larger than ourselves. Zethmar nodded slowly. Then let us find a way to make that happen. The Council will vote on human membership in the Galactic Union. The vote will take place in 3 months, after we have had more time to study your species and understand your intentions. Thank you, Greg said. That is all we ask. A chance to prove ourselves. He turned to leave, then stopped. High Counselor, may I say one more thing? Of course. Greg turned back to face the Council. His voice was strong and clear. You asked if humans pose a threat to the galaxy. Here is my answer. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters. We have faced extinction 7 times and beaten it every time. Our DNA has made us the ultimate survivors. He paused. But survival is not why we came to space. We came because we wanted to meet you. We wanted to learn from you. We wanted to share our story and hear yours. After millions of years of fighting alone, we finally have a chance to be part of a community. They looked at each council member one last time. We are not a threat. We. 6 months had passed since the lecture at the Galactic Academy. 6 months of meetings and negotiations and endless discussions. 6 months of fear and hope and uncertainty. Now, finally, the day of the vote had arrived. Dr. Lisa Cortez stood at the center of the great assembly hall. It was the largest room in the galaxy. The ceiling was so far above that it looked like open sky. Rows of seats rose up on all sides, filled with representatives from over 500 species. Millions of eyes watched her, waiting to hear what she would say. Lisa was nervous, but she did not let it show. She had practiced this speech 100 times. She knew every word by heart. But knowing the words was not enough. She had to make them understand. She had to help them see humanity the way humans saw themselves. Behind her, a holographic display showed the complete human genome. Every gene was labeled. Every sequence was marked. The combined work of thousands of scientists over many years, all displayed for the galaxy to see. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Lisa began. Her voice was calm and clear, carried to every corner of the massive room by invisible technology. I know that many of you are still afraid of my species. I know that what you learn about human DNA has raised many concerns. Today, I want to answer your questions. She turned to face the hologram of human DNA. It glowed softly in the dim light of the assembly hall. You asked us if our DNA truly contains the blueprint for unlimited survival. The answer is yes. Our genetic code is different from any other species in the galaxy. It adapts faster. It learns from damage. It builds new defenses against every threat it encounters. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Lisa let them fade before continuing. But you asked the wrong question. You should have asked why. She gestured, and the display changed. Now it showed the planet Earth, floating in the darkness of space. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. A small, beautiful world. This is our home. It looks peaceful. It looks safe. But for millions of years, it was one of the most dangerous places in the universe. The display changed again, showing images of disaster after disaster. Ice covering the land. Volcanoes filling the sky with ash. Asteroids falling like rain. Diseases spreading from person to person. War. Famine. Flood. Every species in this room chose safety. You found stable planets. You built protected civilizations. You removed the chaos from your lives and from your DNA. And it worked. Your civilizations have lasted for millions of years. Some of you have existed for billions of years. You achieved something amazing. Lisa paused, letting her words sink in. Humanity never had that choice. Our world would not let us be safe. Every time we built something, our planet knocked it down. Every time we grew comfortable, a new disaster forced us to change. We could not engineer away the danger, so our genes learned to embrace it instead. She walked slowly around the display, her footsteps echoing in the silent hall. We do not carry the DNA of conquerors. We carry the DNA of survivors. Every marker in our genome tells a story of catastrophe overcome. Every redundancy is a scar from a disaster we refuse to let destroy us. Commander Greg Hayes stepped forward from his place among the human delegation. He was older now than when he had first spoken to the council. His hair had more gray in it, but his eyes were still strong and kind. The council asked if humanity poses a threat to galactic civilization, Greg said. Here is our answer. The display shifted one final time. Now it showed human DNA intertwined with the genetic signatures of a dozen other species. Lines connected them, showing how information could flow from one to another. Our DNA is not a weapon, Lisa said. It is a gift. A library of survival written in genetic code. Every catastrophe your species might face in the next billion years, humanity has probably already survived. And now we offer that knowledge to you. A Bellori representative in the front row made a surprised sound through his gill slits. You would share your genetic knowledge? Freely? Without asking for anything in return? That is who we are, Greg replied. We survived together on our world. We adapted together. We became human together. For millions of years, we had no one but each other. We learned that the only way to survive is to help each other. He looked out at the vast assembly, at the countless different species watching him. Now we are not alone anymore. We have met you. We have learned your stories. And we want to help you the same way we helped each other. High Counselor Zethmar rose from her seat at the center of the assembly. Her golden eyes glowed softly in the dim light. She was even older now, and moving was difficult for her. But her voice was still strong. Dr. Cortez, Commander Hayes, I have a question. In all your history of survival, did humans ever give up? Did you ever accept that you would be destroyed? Lisa thought about the question for a long moment. She thought about ice ages that lasted thousands of years. About plagues that killed half the population. About wars that burned cities to the ground. About all the moments when it seemed like humanity was finished. No, she said finally. We never gave up. Even when everything seemed hopeless, some of us kept fighting, kept trying, kept believing that tomorrow would be better than today. Zethmar nodded slowly. That is what I thought. And that is why I will vote in favor of human membership in the Galactic Union. A shocked murmur swept through the assembly. The High Counselor almost never revealed her vote before the official count. Let me explain my reasoning, Zethmar continued. For 3 billion years, the older species of this galaxy have focused on stability. We have protected ourselves from change. We have built walls around our civilizations and our DNA, keeping everything the same. She looked out at the assembly with eyes that had seen more than anyone else in the room. But the universe does not stay the same. Stars die. Galaxies collide. New threats emerge that we cannot predict. Someday, something will come that all our stability cannot protect us from. She pointed at the human delegation. When that day comes, we will need allies who know how to change, who know how to adapt, who know how to survive when everything else has failed. We will need humans. The assembly was completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Then Counselor Errol of the Synthery stood up. His gray face was calm, but his voice held something that might have been emotion. The Synthery vote in favor of human membership. One by one, other representatives stood up. The Belori, the Mechanical Collective, the Vreneth. Species after species, voice after voice, all saying the same thing. In favor, in favor, in favor. When the final vote was counted, it was unanimous. Every single species in the Galactic Union had voted to accept humanity as a full member. Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes. She looked at Greg, who was smiling with relief and joy. Behind them, the human delegation was cheering quietly, trying to maintain dignity, but unable to hide their happiness. Zethmar walked slowly down from her seat until she stood directly in front of Lisa. She was shorter than the human woman, and she had to look up to meet her eyes. Welcome to the Galactic Union, Zethmar said. We are glad to have you. Lisa took the old counselor's hand gently. Thank you. We have waited a long time for this. You have waited much longer than you know, Zethmar replied. Your species has been fighting alone for millions of years. You never had anyone to help you. You never had anyone to share your burdens. She squeezed Lisa's hand with surprising strength. That ends today. You are part of our family now. Whatever challenges you face in the future, you will not face them alone. Greg stepped forward to join them. And whatever challenges the galaxy faces, humanity will be there to help. That is our promise. The great assembly hall filled with sound. Cheering, clicking, humming, whistling. 500 different ways of expressing joy, all happening at once. The noise was so loud that it shook the walls. Lisa looked up at the hologram of human DNA, still glowing softly above the assembly. All those genes, all those sequences, all those stories of survival written in the language of life itself. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had survived volcanoes and asteroids and famines. They had faced extinction 7 times and beaten it every time. They had crawled out of caves and built ships that crossed the stars. And now, finally, they were home. Not home on Earth, not home in any single place, but home in a community, home in a family, home in a galaxy full of different species who had once been strangers and were now friends. Lisa wiped the tears from her eyes and smiled. This was what it meant to be human, not just to survive, but to find others and help them survive too. To take the lessons of 1,000,000 years of struggle and share them with anyone who needed them. The species that refused to die had finally found its purpose, and the galaxy would never be the same again.